I'm really an artist poet. I really want to make money so that I could be an artist poet. It's like, I just want to sit on a mountain somewhere, have my coffee, read a million books, and write.
Welcome to the Marketing Team of One podcast, where we have conversations about the issues one-person marketing teams face when trying to meet their goals with limited time and budgets. We have with us this morning Miss Sherry Horowitz. She is the proclaimed AI conjurer, AI whisperer. She uses AI conjurer, but I think of sometimes you're a whisperer because you definitely have to tame this untamable beast in some ways. But you are one of the few, I would put you on the cutting edge of developing AI for, we used to call it commercial art, but we'll call it marketing and design right now, because we did an AI episode a few months back, and it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, and I was coming across as being somebody who was a little bit like, oh, no, I'm never going to be using AI for that, and I'm never going to be using AI for that, and it was just turned into this kind of funny thing about how don't worry about AI, it's okay, it won't steal your job, and I still feel that way. But then I saw your stuff, and I was like, wait a minute, here's somebody who's actually doing like commercial work with AI and also very successful at teaching others to do it. So thank you for joining us, Sherry.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me. Yeah. I'm so happy to be able to share it with people.
We're excited to see some samples. You brought some freebies, which, I mean,
yes,
that's incredible. So we'll be sharing that in the show notes as well as on our freebies page. But I wanted to start off by kind of learning a little bit more about who you were, where you started, where you came from, and then what turned you into the AI conjurer that you are today.
Well, way back, I was always an artist and a writer. So I started out in fine art, a little fashion design, and my life was such that I didn't have the luxury to pursue art for art's sake. I always had to work. So, but I knew I was an artistic person, so I had to channel those energies into something useful. Because I am a writer as well as a visual thinker, I always was fascinated with advertising. So I figured that I could channel both of the parts that I wanted to channel. It was like one, just visual and just writing were not enough for me. I like to fuse the two. So the only commercial avenue for that in those days was kind of like advertising, combined the two. So if I learned graphic design, I could also be a little bit of a writer. Branding always fascinated me. So when I went to school, I studied advertising design to channel both sides that I wanted to nurture. And I worked as a graphic designer, and I worked as a freelance commercial artist for many years, but also because I became a young mother very early on in life. I actually have 5 children at this point, but they're all big and grown up. But because I had to be a freelancer, even though I always wanted to work in an agency, I educated myself as if I was in an agency so that I could bring the best work to my private clients. But because I couldn't work in an agency, I had to hustle and freelance. And I ended up working in many different industries. So I have a wide range of experiences in commercial design. I worked as a toy designer at one point. I wrote children's books with a toy company, kind of like, if anybody remembers the Klutz books in the early 2000s when my kids were growing up. I created a Klutz book mock-up line it was called Pretend and Play for a toy company. I did makeup design for teens. I designed all kinds of different things over my life.
You were a visual artist. You did painting. You did kind of fine art stuff. So it was very visual. It wasn't sculpting, that kind of stuff.
Right. No, it was illustration. And fashion design and product development, advertising. So it was commercial graphic design.
Okay.
with, whatever advertising experience I brought to it. And then when I had my fourth child, I ended up getting a master's in poetry. And I spent about 7 years writing and publishing.
Wow.
That's another whole podcast. But
But
be that as it may.
yeah, that's the part where I really wanted to hear you talk about that, because in the pre-interview when we were chatting, when you brought up the idea of poetry, going
Yeah.
back and actually, you got your master's degree in poetry, did you not? I mean,
Yes. Yes.
you went all in on poetry.
Yeah.
Which, when I was telling people about having you on this podcast, they were like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And I said, "No, what's really interesting is the journey that she took, because she started off as kind of an OG commercial artist back in the day, and you're based in New York. You've always been in New York, so you were able to really stretch your legs with that commercial art illustration side of things. But then you took a break, and you were always interested in writing." And you went into poetry, not writing, but poetry, which I think is kind of the magical secret sauce to what you provide, because poetry has to do the work with as few words as possible. This is my layman's interpretation of poetry.
Well, no, you're on the right track.
You have to use very few words to describe a visual world to people in poetry, which, when you think about prompting AI and telling the robots, that to me is what you're trying to do, is build a world in your head with words and then tell the robots how to do it as well. Is that?
You nailed it. I'll take your metaphor or your description even further, which is, and it took me a while to figure out why, when I adapted it, I saw the potential early on, why I was able to adapt to it so quickly. I was doing client work already in 2022 already. Yes, you have to distill very large, unwieldy ideas, both visually, metaphorically, into a small amount of words. And what that forces you to do is to think very wide in terms of like macro thinking.
Yeah.
And then this granular expression. Really, it has to do with finding voice, where I had to figure out this kind of thinking in order to talk who the invisible audience was, in other words, which really goes more into also my personal topic that I was writing about.
Okay.
A lot of the subject matter. I had to write to two voices. But that kind of training is what made me able to think large and small at the same time.
I like the phrase poetic thinking. If we were to try to train people, and we're going to get into that, because that's what's really amazing, is you've taught hundreds of thousands of people through your class how to prompt AI and create, generative AI imagery.
My course really does dispel the mystery of why things work, when they work, and why they don't work. But I want to talk about what we were talking about before, which is to extend the point that poetic thinking is also rhetorical thinking. This is going to get a little abstract, but we'll talk about it more, and it'll become clear to people when we talk about it more. When you're talking about a massive data set like Midjourney, that it's trained on billions and billions of points of data, both visually and linguistically, the complexity lies in that you're talking about aggregate language conditioning. In other words, each word is a data set attached to then massive different visual data sets. So let's bring it home to a very concrete example.
Okay.
Is a bat an animal, or is a bat something that you hit a ball with?
Okay.
And then when is a rectangle a door?
Wow.
And so you have to think in this aggregate way, which is the macro way I'm talking about, and then think about how it might interpret itself in an average, as it is a recipe in the prompt. Now, this really works well in Midjourney, because Midjourney, one of the reasons that Midjourney is leading is because Midjourney has such deep language conditioning. And one of the things I teach in my course is how to understand these layers of technology. It's about understanding how the Midjourney is constructed, how the prompt taps into those layers of technology, and then what it's doing when you put that recipe together.
Let's pause a second and talk a little bit about specifically the platform, because there's a lot of different platforms out there that people are using, and it sounds like your preference is Midjourney, probably because did you go to some special training? Do you have a brother-in-law who works at Midjourney who gave you all the code back end?
So I think that also came with testing so much.
Okay.
Like in the beginning, I learned along with Midjourney as they were building the product. What makes Midjourney better for a person like me is that the depth of its knowledge and its interpretive ability. It's extremely artistic in its interpretive ability, but while maintaining a certain coherence to what you have in your mind. So most artists or creative directors who get into using art directors who get into using Midjourney will tell you that's why they prefer. And they have, I think, over 20 million subscribers at this point.
Wow.
Also, the UI in Midjourney is really attuned to the creative process and the creative thinking. I like the tool because it breaks up the thought process less. It understands you more deeply for most of the time.
People trained the robot, but then the robot helped to train you, and kind of there was this back and forth between. Do you feel like it was that in a sense or not?
They're trying to make it more personal so that you can train it to understand within certain parameters what you like. They have a global personalization code. It's not understanding anything in a reasonable sense. It's attaching pixelated patterns to a word.
Ah, okay.
If you spent so many years in the visual field and you understand references as an artist might or a commercial designer, but before we go into a project, we spend a lot of time considering the best way to express an idea, the best aesthetic to have, and we're influenced, or we look for influences and inspiration in the outside world, and that could be anything. Now, Midjourney's trained on a Leon 5B data set, which is billions and billions and billions of things that are dumped in from the internet. So that and again, this goes back to the aggregate thinking. So when you pick a word, you're tapping into every connection. And I guess this is also the poetry. Poets are very attuned to the nuances of language. So because I'm an artist and a poet, I understand the context of language. Plus, I have the art, history, genre, visual background, and it's tapping into the zeitgeist of culture. I teach people that the 4 frameworks to use this tool is think like a creative director, see like an art director, write like a novelist, and then hack like an engineer. What do I mean with the last one? Let me give you a very concrete example.
Okay.
Early on in one of the versions, there was a lot of censorship. And I was trying to create for a social media campaign for women in STEAM. The project was using a Greek goddess of fertility named Hera. So I wanted to create like a Marvel-style pregnant goddess. Now, Marvel is a data set. Superheroes are a data set. Goddesses are a data set. Greek mythology is a data set. They're all there visually. And pregnant women are a data set. I couldn't use the word pregnancy or I would get booted off the platform.
Wow.
But I was thinking to myself how this is ridiculous. Like, I know there's pregnant women in the data sets. It's not possible that it's not. So I constructed a prompt that intimated pregnancy. And I said, of fertility, of motherhood. About the most beautiful goddess against a blue sky, mythological, Marvel-style pregnant goddess.
That's amazing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Wow.
And that was like a victory. It took me a few hours of hacking away, testing different prompts, because I was getting Marvel-style, beautiful results. I was describing it like a novelist.
Yeah.
I was directing as if I would be a, creative director or talking to an art director about what I wanted to see. And I couldn't get the pregnancy in there. But that's what I mean when I say that that you can hack it.
That's a fascinating journey, and in a sense, the lifestyle of an illustrator is that, where you're doodling, sketching, drawing roughly. You're doing it though with words.
Yes, and I was an illustrator too.
Yeah.
So that process is inherent in the thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And artists are kind of having this conversation with themselves.
Yes.
When they're working on a project, especially if you're doing something that's in the sense of, in the framework of creative direction or art direction, then it's a very high level. You're really using language in your head the whole time internally.
Yep. I really want to get into seeing the results of this. We've talked a lot about in concept and theory, but as a visual person, I need to see stuff now. I want to see all the magic.
This was actually recently, in the last 6 months, this was not possible a year ago to get it to cohere to a prompt, like so specifically, like to put fish in a question mark shape.
And that's like underwater, and the fish are swimming around to form this question mark. Wow.
Yes, and you can retexture. There's a retexture feature now in the editor, and updated features where you can take this image and then kind of keep the composition and the basic subject matter and make it in another medium. So what I did with this one was I redid the lighting. You can access your imagination with language. Data sets are the new medium, as we discussed, which now you understand. I was trying to talk about how you can mash up all kinds of interesting ideas, which you can see there.
So that's a gentleman's head inside of a fish, like a jar or a glass.
Yes,
right?
Fishbowl-ish jar. Yeah. I have a lot of fun with these. This is just, me painting, using painting ideas. You can add text, and this was for like a project I was doing.
Wow. So that was built completely with a prompt. You didn't go back in and say, oh, this sentence, when then the client came back and said, no, we need to change that word because we don't like that. And that just flowed out like that. You just
I use a combination of getting a prompt to where I want it, and then tweaking it using all the different features in Midjourney.
Okay.
And using the editing tool as well.
And so the editing tool, is that more like an intuitive, like paintbrush type of tool? Or
it's like a paintbrush, yes. I could erase this area if I didn't like it and regenerate it.
Oh, okay.
I can expand the whole thing. So it starts out small, and then I expand it. I add more. So you can regenerate parts of it too.
Jeez, okay.
Yeah. You can use your language and your own knowledge and a body of work to train a model to do the heavy lifting, which is why I gave people access to Pimento as well. Every model, platform, database, like Flux versus Midjourney, is optimized a bit differently and trained a bit differently. So what I love about Pimento is that it's really designed for commercial use, and it allows you to be proprietary and maintain privacy for branded assets.
So that means that the data set or the prompting that you're doing is not sent out into the universe and shared by everybody else.
It's not public. Okay. You can upload your own assets. So say you have a model that belongs to your company. You can take all those pictures, train a model on it, and then put it in different clothing. Or put a product in any setting you want and do really cool things with it. And it's designed better for commercial end use cases than Midjourney is. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just really well done. There are other models. There's another model called Krea.ai and Magnific.ai and other models that will do all these different things, but their UI is a bit more confusing, a bit broader. And Pimento is really sharp in the way they help big agencies and anyone can use it, but I'm saying agencies are adopting it, and I like it very much for that reason.
Interesting.
So you can use the code that I give away for a free month. So this exploration was around some of the keywords were aquarium costume, scuba. And there's a lot of very clever prompting in these. I think one of them has the word sunk in it at the end. And the order of words does matter.
The order matters. So
Yes.
what you start with, does it kind of start with this funnel? Is it like a vision of a funnel where you start with real broad terms and then narrow?
That's a whole class.
By the
But
class,
to
right?
make it very simple, there's a subject and then there's a description around the subject, and whatever you want to. If you have a vision, you kind of direct it as like an art director would.
Yeah.
Blend visuals and reference ideas to create new images. This is a long process of blending and my own photography and a bunch of different things. Well, you can create any model and any setting.
Oh wow! Look at the variety in that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I did work for a eyebrow grooming company called Mrs. Highbrow I think they're in Amsterdam, and I created a whole series of AI models for one of their campaigns.
Wow.
Manipulate and iterate your idea. In other words, you can start and then stretch the canvas, change it up.
I love cats.
Yeah, I love cats, especially when they're drinking coffee.
Yeah.
In any time period.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, I did a lot of fashion design, ideation. This is, commercial design. Perfect moment, again, photography. This was a very long process of iteration to get here. A lot of blending, a lot of mixing, but I was just doing some ideation. This is really neat. This one I discovered by accident.
Wow.
I couldn't even have predicted it.
The whole thing's made out of water, the faucet and the water and everything. Yeah.
Well, it does look like that, but the faucet's like sort of suspended in the water, but yeah. This is also a lot of iteration goes into these. So that's what you said is accurate. It is a new sort of medium because if you're an artist and you're a creator, there is time that's needed. You don't, even if you have a vision, it's like when you start with watercolor, right? You might have something in your head. It doesn't always come out just because it's in your head the way you intended. There's a certain sense of error in iterating that you just need to go through.
Well, and there's even parts of the creative process that I think that surprise element is what is so refreshing about it.
Yes.
I mean, in my own personal work, I remember I would throw phrases into a bag and just pick out 3 different things just to get some sort of a random influence that you can't calculate in your own brain. You have to let the universe kind of make happen, and you're kind of doing it.
Yeah, so Midjourney is really fun like that. That's how I sometimes use Midjourney. Sometimes I'm purposely vague and ambiguous because I'm not 100% sure what I want. This is a fake spec ad that I created for booking.com because I had an idea that I wanted to flesh out for content. I used a whole series of these. I think I might have more of these here about stress-free cancellations.
When we talk about going through the process, how many words make up a prompt? Is there 10, 50? Are you writing paragraphs?
There is some sort of limit. I don't know what it is, and I never hit it, but you can get very, very long. The thing is that there is in the documentation, it'll tell you how it calculates the references. Sometimes more language doesn't do anything. That's like a very technical question, but it's not. There's no like immediate limit.
But you're referencing maybe how many iterations do you go through on? Is there an average number? Sometimes you just hit it right away, or is it?
Yeah, it depends what it is. If I've done some work before, I can do it really fast.
Wow.
And I'll go back to some of my earlier work to, remind myself what I did. But there's certain things, like I said, that you just do so many times again and again. You test, that you kind of just become used to what it needs to hear and what you need to research if you need a new data set.
One of the other examples that I've seen people use is they'll actually, and this is maybe more from a photographic background, if they were photographers or are photographers, they'll actually enter in the type of camera, the type of lens, the angles, the f-stops and the shutter speeds and the film type and things like that. Do you get into that as
Definitely.
much?
That's one of the hacking techniques. is that you can hack a data set where you know it's found. I go through this in my course where I show you different data sets that I hack to co-opt a certain effect so that I don't have to describe it at all.
It's just...
In other words, you're referencing an archetype. Let's say I wanted a guy wearing a flamboyant suit with a certain kind of vibe to him, right? So I would say Hollywood movie director. That Hollywood movie director has associated with it already many implied features. Sometimes I make up genres. There's a prompt that I did with a Hollywood movie director where I wanted a certain aesthetic. So I made up a data set called formalism. I mean, this came after trying many things. But this is where the language part comes in, where I made up this sort of idea, which I don't think formalism actually exists. But it understood it, and it did what I wanted it to do.
Interesting. So it made an ism out of something that was already itself, and it was like a meta.
This also references a mashup of genres.
Yeah.
And this was a product of tons of iteration. And also back and forth between the different versions. Because some versions interpret things differently than others. In other words, Midjourney has several versions. So there's a lot of manipulation that goes into it.
I'm observing this work. That the lighting is just incredible on that car. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm looking at a lot of your work is very, in my mind, it's central. There's a central figure, and then there's a background that gives it context. There's singular images. Is that really the kind of, if there's a look to this design, is that just kind of your style, or is that really the best way to work within this medium?
No, that's a good point, but it's still tricky. I mean, it's getting better all the time, but multiple people, like here, I was able to manipulate the tattoo a bit. I would still probably play around with this more. Here's where it gets a little mind-bending.
Wow.
Where I do like concept work.
Yeah.
And, building characters with expressions.
Is that a mashup of three images that came out of Midjourney?
No,
or
this is pure prompt, no visuals, pure language. Just digging into the data sets. Butler, frantic, maybe I wrote some crazy adjectives.
Boy, that's something. That's complicated.
And then, this is part of that other exploration that I was mashing up film noir with dastardly.
Looks like Cruella de Vil or something. Almost.
Yeah, right. And then you can just do all kinds of stock art, really fun ideas.
Now that looks like you were referencing illustration from the 18th century or the 19th century.
I actually was. Yes, Harlequin was in here.
Yeah.
Harlequin. I don't remember the whole prompt by heart, and it's also iterative, so I don't always remember what I did. This is just fun things that I experiment with. There's a term called, this you learn when you go into the communities, is a term called rainbow core or rainbow punk. All these cool things that are in the documentation where you could you mash up words, you can make up words. It's really, really cool.
That's so great there. I love that.
Yeah. Okay, I go prompt hunting sometimes, and then I fix the prompt, or I adapt it or tweak it or use it as part of another prompt.
Oh, wow.
Imagine the weird. I did a series of hybrids. Imagine the beautiful bridal company. Just my own projects.
Oh.
I'm always experimenting.
Wow. Look at that. Yeah, you're not going to get that shot in real life.
No, right. Imagine the impossible.
Wow.
What if the fox guarded the hen house? Oh, this is that social media campaign that I did. Mrs. Highbrow, yeah. They wanted some cool androgynous models with
and they're
makeup
fine letting people know that they used AI for this. And
they gave me a recommendation on my site, and they loved it. Yep. They were not shy about it.
They're just like, well, that's how we are. That's how we roll.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
This is spec work that I did to test an idea that I had for Sephora to build up my portfolio when I was doing more client work, and just really fun. You can just go crazy. Here's my stress-free bookings. Some things you have to stress about.
Part of that
all the
whole
different
campaign, really. You've designed an entire campaign around this.
Yes, you can do an entire. That's the point of this, is to show that you can. If you have an idea, you can design, and you're in advertising or marketing, you can design a whole idea.
Yeah.
You have to know how to prompt, but you can design an entire idea. That was the point. I did fashion. Here's some things I wish were in my closet for fall. I studied fashion design in my early life. So I don't want to take up so much time, but just to show you, it's almost done.
Well, it definitely shows. Oh, wow. That's
motifs.
quite different.
All kinds of prints. You can imagine anything. So that's that.
So let's talk about the limitations then, because you said that there were, and obviously it sounds like there were guardrails around certain prompts earlier. Pregnant women
still censorship.
Censorship.
I think if you try, they're trying to make it safe and avoid deep fakes. So I could do a politician in the early days, and now you can't, especially if they're in office.
Interesting.
There's hacks around it, but I won't mention them.
Yep.
But in any case, there are certain things that if you have a unique idea that's not in the data set. So, for example, if you want to go on the community, you can search any idea and get a head start and start looking for prompts. I show this in my course too.
Okay.
How you can use the community to just get started and brainstorm. And then what to do with those prompts. And the advanced course that's coming out will show how to dive deep into prompt structure and how to really do advanced things. But the course, as it is, shows you just how to use Midjourney, what's possible. If you have a really original idea, we need to get very creative to get Midjourney to do it. That's when you use visuals. That's when you blend. That's when you use editing. Takes a lot more work, but it's doable. It just takes work. It's a medium. It's like when you go out shooting photography, are you always going to get the shot you're looking for?
Right.
Sometimes you don't even know until you go through it or crop something or deal with it afterwards. So it's the same thing. It is a new medium. It's a new tool. When the training data is not there is when it can be difficult.
That's where you're, in a sense, training your own unique version of your model.
Yes. And that part is getting better all the time. And again, that's why I have Pimento in there, because Pimento gives you a different way of controlling a tight model, whereas Midjourney uses mood boards now.
Okay.
Their mood boards don't work quite the same as Pimento's does. So what I do is I'll test back and forth between the two models, which one gives me a result that I like better.
Do they have open documentation around this?
I absolutely read through every single piece of documentation they had.
Wow.
I also spent time on the Discord channels. There is an excellent grassroots Discord group called AI Creative Community.
Okay.
You can find them on LinkedIn. It's called AICC. We get together on LinkedIn and have live chats we geek out about prompting. Midjourney does have communities. They keep the communities up and running on Discord, and now they're putting it up on the website. And finding grassroots communities was very helpful. Yeah, there was no one to teach anybody anything. Instead of coaching people, I created this one course. I made it, 9.5 hours, where I just break down all my case studies, my client work, how I arrived at the conclusions, what I did, what a person needs to do to, let's say, improve their skills, which skills you need. Yeah. And I use it sometimes to brainstorm. It collapses the process of ideation and research sometimes.
Interesting, yeah.
And it gives you back ideas you don't expect sometimes. So what I teach people is how to use it intentionally, with intention, and how and when you will lose control.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So a lot of what I teach is how to use language to drive the prompt, when to bring in imagery, which aspects of the features give you more control, which give you less control, why you might want less control
Hmm.
in terms of creativity.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful tool. I'll tell you a really weird one. I was doing a vintage sardine can, and I wanted that key in the old vintage sardine cans.
Yeah.
It was not in the training data. I actually messaged one of the prompt chat rooms on Midjourney, and they just said it's not there.
Wow. Because it's such
So I
an
couldn't
old
prompt for it.
reference, and there weren't a lot of photos of that they could
Right.
train on.
Right. It wasn't in there. So that sometimes you'll hit that, and sometimes you'll hit like a really weird idea. So like last week I was trying to do monster dishes in a sink. Like I wanted the dishes to look like little monsters and have little faces.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not anywhere, and I can't. I'm like being all clever and figuring out, it's giving me a headache sometimes. But if I'm tenacious enough, I'll get there. Because I hate Photoshop. I love you, Adobe. I'm doing something for Adobe now.
Oh no! Oh no!
I love you, Adobe. I love you, Adobe. I still use Illustrator all the time.
I'm sure they can handle the abuse.
I think so.
They'll be fine. You said before you ran into issues when you were doing some commercial work and you were trying to get a partnership with an art director who said, yeah, we'd love to bring you on, but we can't because they don't want to use AI. And I know that it's a controversial issue. The controversy, I guess, would come in when it's consumer packaged goods that are using human models, and then they're not going to be using human models. I would think that would be maybe one of those borderlines of where they might not want it publicly known that they're using AI generated models.
Right. That's right.
I think we're still at that point where a lot of people, I mean, my children, they're very much against a lot of this AI stuff because they feel very threatened by it. And I could see that as a young person.
Too.
Yeah.
My children too. Yes.
We've seen a lot of these dramatic, revolutionary technologies come in and completely transform our industry. And now we're at a point where, you have to embrace it and get excited about it and use it as much as you possibly can. Learn about it so that you're ahead of it. I think if you don't
100%.
learn about it, you're kind of at risk.
And there's a lot of misunderstanding around it. Like once I think that the pendulum is swinging the other way because people are realizing it does take so much creativity and it's still time consuming. The difference is that I'm so much more productive and efficient at the work I do. So whereas I would have to either take a photograph in the old days, photograph, but take a photograph and then put it into a digital tool like Photoshop.
Right.
Wow, antiquated. And then doctor it up for a client. Now I can give the client 100 ideas in a week.
And that's, I think, what's so limiting for people is the idea of like before when art was hard to create or design and annual reports and traditional graphic design, we didn't see a lot of branding all over the place. When it became more democratized and more people were given the tools and the digital tools, you saw more brand expression. You saw more growth. You saw brand and advertising in a lot more places. So that's where I feel like in talking with my kids, don't worry about it because, yes, in this model of this set amount of commercial art, we'll call it, yes, we're going to have some sacrifices in there because if we keep it in this small box, what the idea, though, is the box gets bigger.
I think that the barrier to entry for manipulating a medium has been lowered.
Yes.
In other words, I don't need to spend 10 years mastering photography. I just have to understand what photography does, understand the history of it, understand the medium, and then I can have my art assistant create it.
Right. Yeah.
Which is a tireless, uncomplaining machine.
Yes, the dream, right?
Do it now.
I look at all of the AI tools out there as something that gets me about 80% of the way there, and then I need to finish up with the last 20%. What's amazing about what you've done is you've really kind of completed that journey to the 100%. Here we are. We're done.
I can do a lot, and I'll tell you why. It's because I love Adobe.
Yeah.
I don't like Photoshop. I
Lucky you.
really, I can't stand all the buttons. I still find Photoshop very tedious,
Yeah.
and I figure out ways to hack Midjourney so that I don't have to go into
You don't have to
Photoshop.
learn Photoshop. Smart.
It's a matter of survival.
Well, and I think that speaks a little bit to our audience, because marketing teams of one don't have a lot of time for that stuff. And it sounds like that still takes a lot of time to figure out how to prompt it, but you're more in this kind of literal word-based universe as opposed to this technical, beep, bop, boop, touch the buttons and the sliders and all that stuff.
It lets me ideate in real time.
Yeah. So you said something interesting earlier about your process when you said knowing when to prompt it with other visuals. And I know a lot of times when I'm in there, I immediately am like, here's this style of this poster. Do me in one just like it except for Albuquerque or whatever, Like, is there a moment where you're like, okay, I've prompted enough with words. Now I need to train it on a visual?
Yeah. You can now guide it with a visual, meaning another pixel pattern, which makes it more difficult sometimes because it's interpreting the pixel pattern in a different way than the language. I still think, and I still have the most success when language is the driving force.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Although blending gives me excellent results. Once I'm iterated to a point, when it's not working, I'll hack with a visual or blend event, like at the end of the process.
Yeah.
And then I get more what I need.
It's like it just puts that final spin, oh, bingo, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
And also often a word or two at the end.
How long are your prompts? I'm imagining paragraphs or stanzas of a poem.
It depends on the project, depends on the, some things it does really well that you get to know, like portrait will give you great composition for a portrait. It's a data set. It's a great data set. Editorial magazine, gorgeous composition.
Like I'm thinking visually, like there's my palette of all my acrylics or my gouache or my colored pencils, as where you're like, here's this data set, here's this data set. I'm going to pull from these and then mix them together in this, and then boom, here we go. Is that kind of
I'm so glad you said that, because I have been saying this already for 2 years, that the data sets are the new medium. It is a little bit of a learning curve, but if you are a creative person and you don't mind spending a little bit of time, there's a lot of work you could really do for your clients, especially in terms of, a lot of times branding, messaging really intersects with marketers' work because you're doing all the messaging for them. And I have a free guide in my little giveaway where I give away a whole prompt template for marketers.
Oh,
and it'll really get you started. It will really help you a lot because you can plug in to the template. It's a whole prompt structure. Test it out. I have a lot of visuals that go with it, so you can really break it down, understand how I apply the principles to it. So you can do a ton of visual work for your clients. You can create amazing ads, social images. Being a team of one is hard, but there's tools more and more now that are enabling me to do what I'm doing. In researching how I could automate my marketing to promote my coursework and the other courses which I will be building, which is advanced coursework, this was a prompt fundamentals course, is I found an incredible platform called Stella. I'm blown away because they pieced together all these no-code bots. I don't know what she did behind the scenes, but she's a marketing genius. And she built this amazing platform where I could, instead of doing a prompt, like a content in LinkedIn, I could just use her platform and it'll reformat it into any other social media channel that I want.
Wow.
But not only that, it also will do really high-level AI generative post ideas based on your personal brand, the brief that you outline, and the competitive market analysis.
Oh, wow.
So she offered a 3-month 20% off code for anyone who wants to try it.
Oh, perfect.
So I will give you that for
Thank
your
you.
viewers afterwards. I am going to be using it. It is a very interesting tool. And I have been searching a lot for something like this and trying to build it myself.
That's really great. Well, thank you so much for all of your insights and all of your freebies, and just your story is fascinating. The work is incredible. And I take
you.
everything back that I said about having AI do final work, because I do see the potential is really amazing to see. You've taken it so far, and it's an honor to really talk with you. You're
Thank
one of
you.
the leading AI, we'll say,
Thank you.
conjurers in the world, and it's just fascinating to see the development and listen to you talk about all this stuff.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you letting me geek out.
Anytime.
Thank you. And it's nice to talk to a fellow artist who has been through in the trenches, so
Got
you
the
understand.
scars. Yeah, I could see. Well,
It's so nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sherry. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for tuning in. For more information and other episodes, subscribe to the Marketing Team of One podcast on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify podcast networks. You can also chat with us on the r/Marketing Team of One subreddit, or visit marketingteamofone.com to learn more.